The knock came just before dawn, not sharp or loud, but soft and uneven, like something brushing against the wood and slipping away. She was already awake, listening to the quiet stretch of land around her cabin, the wind moving low through the grass, the distant call of a bird that never waited for the sun. Life had taught her that unexpected sounds at that hour usually meant trouble or need, sometimes both. She pulled on her boots, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and opened the door without thinking twice. That was when she saw the foal. It stood a few steps from her doorway, legs trembling, chest heaving in quick, shallow breaths. Its coat was still pale with youth, not yet darkened by dust and seasons. One front leg bent at an angle that made her heart tighten, and a thin line of dried blood marked the fur near its knee. The young Mustang's eyes were wide, dark, and filled with a kind of fear she knew too well, the fear of being alone in a world that did not slow down for the weak. For a moment neither of them moved. The foal seemed unsure whether to flee or collapse. She stayed still, hands open, breathing slow, letting the quiet speak for her. The land around them held its breath. This was not the first wounded creature to cross her path, but something about this one felt different. It had not stumbled here by chance. It had chosen her door. She glanced toward the open plains behind it, searching for any sign of the herd. Mustangs did not leave their young behind unless forced by danger, injury, or death. The morning light revealed no movement, only long shadows and the endless stretch of earth that had given and taken so much over the years. Whatever had happened, this foal had been alone for some time. Carefully she stepped forward. The foal flinched but did not run. That alone told her how badly it was hurt. A healthy Mustang would have vanished in a heartbeat. She spoke softly, not with words meant to be understood, but with a tone shaped by patience and respect. She had learned long ago that animals listened more to how you spoke than what you said. The foal shifted its weight and nearly fell. She reached out, steadying it just enough to keep it upright. Its body was warm, alive, fighting. She could feel the tremble under her hand, the thinness of its frame, the fast rhythm of its heart. This was a wild creature, born to run free across open land, not to lean on human hands. Yet here it was, trusting her in the only way it could. She guided it slowly toward the side of the cabin where the ground was softer. Every step was a struggle. The injured leg barely touched the earth. She knelt beside it, examining the wound as best she could without causing pain. It looked like the result of a bad fall, maybe into rocks or a broken fence left behind by careless hands. Nothing about it was clean, but nothing looked beyond hope either. Hope, she knew, was a dangerous thing to offer too quickly. Her own past pressed in as she worked. She had not always lived alone on this stretch of land. Once there had been laughter here, shared meals, plans spoken out loud. Loss had come quietly, then all at once, leaving her with more silence than she had ever wanted. Over time, she learned to fill that silence with purpose, tending the land, helping where she could, asking for nothing in return. Still, some wounds never fully closed, whether in people or in animals. She fetched water, clean cloth, and the few supplies she kept for emergencies. The foal watched her every move, eyes tracking her with a mix of fear and fragile trust. When she returned, it tried to pull away, but its strength gave out. She whispered calm into the cool air, easing her hands over the injured leg, cleaning it slowly. The foal jerked once, then stilled, breathing hard. It was a small victory, but victories mattered. As the sun crept higher, she became aware of another risk. A lone Mustang foal was never truly alone. Predators watched for weakness, and the smell of blood carried far. If the herd was nearby, they might return, and wild horses did not always welcome human help, no matter how well meant. She would have to decide soon whether to keep the foal hidden or risk leading it back toward where its family might be. Both choices carried danger. She looked into the foal's eyes again and felt a quiet question settled between them. Not spoken, not clear, but heavy all the same. Was she willing to take on the burden of this life, even for a short while? Was she ready to open her door not just to an injured animal, but to the uncertainty it brought with it? The wind shifted, carrying a distant sound across the land, hooves faint but real, her body tensed. She stood slowly, scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, A herd might be moving, searching, or running from something worse. If they came too close, things could turn dangerous for all of them. If they moved away, this foal's chances would grow slimmer by the hour. She pressed her forehead lightly against the foal's neck, a brief moment of closeness she did not allow herself often. "You picked the wrong door," she murmured, not unkindly. Or maybe she thought it was the right one after all. The foal shifted, trying to stand stronger now that the pain had dulled just a little. It was brave in the simple way only the young could be, unaware of how close the edge truly was. She admired that. She needed that. As the day unfolded, she knew word would travel, even without voices. Neighbors miles away might notice signs, tracks, questions left unanswered. Some believed wild Mustangs were better left to fate, that nature should decide without interference. Others saw them as symbols of freedom worth protecting at any cost. She had heard both sides and lived long enough to know that truth often lives somewhere in between. She closed the cabin door halfway, creating a shelter of shadow and warmth. The foal lay down at last, exhaustion winning over fear. She sat beside it, listening to its breathing, steady but shallow. Every decision from this point forward would matter. Every hour could change the ending. Somewhere beyond the rise of land hoof sounded again, closer this time, and mixed with them was another noise she did not like, sharp and metallic, carried by the wind. Her jaw tightened. Whatever had injured this foal might not be gone. She reached for the tools she kept by the door, not weapons, but things meant to mend, to protect, to buy time. She did not know if it would be enough. She only knew she could not turn away now. As shadows shortened and the air grew tense, the foal stirred and lifted its head, ears pricked toward the sound outside. She followed its gaze, heart pounding, knowing that what came next would decide whether this small life would run free again or become another quiet loss on the open land. The sound outside did not fade. It lingered, rising and falling with the wind, close enough to stir the dust along the fence line. She stayed still, listening the way people used to listen before noise filled every corner of life. The foal shifted again, ears turning, body tense despite its exhaustion. Whatever was out there, it sensed it too. She eased to her feet and stepped just far enough to see beyond the cabin's edge. The land rolled gently away, broken by low brush and scattered stone. Hoofprints marked the dirt near the creek bed, fresh and deep, more than one set. A herd had passed through recently, moving fast. That alone raised questions. Mustangs did not rush without reason. Her thoughts went back to the years when she first settled here. The land had already been marked by old paths, faint trails worn smooth by generations of hooves. She learned to read those signs the way others read letters on a page. Broken grass meant speed, tight turns meant fear. Wide spacing meant strength and calm. What she saw now spoke of panic, not just from animals, but from something pressing them forward. She returned to the foal, crouching beside it. Its breathing was steadier, but the injured leg twitched now and then, reminding her that time was not on their side. She cleaned the wound again, careful and slow. Each time she touched it, she felt a pull inside her, a memory of tending another life long ago, when her hands shook with the same mix of hope and worry. She had not always been someone who helped. Once, she believed the world worked best when you stayed out of its way. Hard lessons changed that. Loss had taught her that standing aside did not spare you pain, it only delayed it. So she stayed. She learned. She became someone the land could lean on, quietly, without praise. The foal lifted its head and nudged her arm, a small gesture, unsure but sincere. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Trust, once given, carried weight. She could not fail it now, even if doing the right thing meant facing trouble she had avoided for years. The noise outside shifted again, this time joined by voices, faint but unmistakable, human voices. Not loud but purposeful, she felt a knot form in her chest. People came through this area now and then, usually passing through, sometimes looking for work or trade. But voices mixed with hurried hoofprints rarely meant anything good for wild horses. She moved quickly, guiding the foal farther into the shade, out of sight from the open land. She spread an old blanket beneath it, offering comfort where she could. The foal resisted at first, then settled, worn down by pain and fatigue. She whispered to it, not promises, just presence. Her eyes drifted to the tools by the door again. She had no wish for confrontation. Still, she would not let harm walk through her doorway without standing in its way. The land had given her enough strength for that. As the voices drew closer, she caught fragments carried by the wind, talk of tracks, talk of a young one falling behind. Nothing outright cruel, but nothing gentle either. It was the kind of talk that treated living beings as problems to be solved, not lives to be protected. She stayed inside, heart beating hard but steady. The cabin walls were thin, but they had held through storms and long winters. She hoped they could hold through this too. Outside, boots crunched on gravel. Someone paused near the creek. Another voice answered, lower, uncertain. The foal stirred again, sensing her tension. She placed a hand on its neck, grounding both of them. In that moment, she realized how much she had been alone without truly noticing. The cabin had echoed with silence for so long that she forgot what it felt like to worry for someone else. This small, injured Mustang had brought that back in a single morning. Her mind raced through possibilities. If they were searching for the foal, hiding it might only delay the inevitable. If they were simply passing through, any sound could draw attention. She needed more information, but stepping outside now could expose them both. She waited. Minutes stretched. The voices moved farther away, then closer again, circling. She caught the word fence carried on the air, then another word she did not like, spoken with frustration. The foal's injury suddenly made more sense. Broken boards, old wire, human carelessness leaving scars long after people moved on. She clenched her jaw. She had spent years repairing what others abandoned, patching fences, pulling rusted metal from the ground so animals would not suffer for someone else's neglect. It angered her that the work was never done, that there was always more damage than hands willing to fix it. A shadow crossed the cabin window. She froze. Someone was close now, close enough that a single misstep could change everything. The foal held still, as if it understood the stakes. She admired its quiet strength, even in pain. The shadow lingered, then moved on. A voice called out, asking if anyone lived this far out. She did not answer. Silence had protected her before. She hoped it would again. The voices drifted away at last, fading into the wide open space. She waited long after they were gone, counting her breaths, listening for any sign they might return. When she was sure, she allowed herself to sit back against the wall, relief washing through her in a shaky wave. But relief did not bring peace. Questions pressed in harder now. Why were people tracking Mustangs so closely? Why did the herd run instead of circle back for the injured foal? And why did she feel this was only the beginning of something larger than one wounded leg? As afternoon light slanted through the window, she brought the foal water, holding the bowl steady while it drank. It drank slowly, carefully, as if learning how to trust each moment. She smiled despite herself. Small steps mattered. She thought about the coming night. Cold would settle in, and predators would grow bold. Keeping the foal here would mean constant vigilance. Letting it go would almost certainly mean losing it. Neither choice felt right, yet one had to be made soon. She stepped outside briefly, scanning the horizon. In the distance, a dark line moved across the land, almost blending with the earth. A herd, far off, restless. She could not tell if it was the foal's family, but her chest tightened at the thought. Somewhere out there, a mother might be searching, calling, waiting. She returned inside, closing the door softly. The foal watched her, eyes reflecting the fading light. She knelt beside it again, brushing dust from its coat, committing every detail to memory. If the time came to let it go, she wanted to remember it whole, not just as a problem she tried to solve. Outside, the wind rose, carrying with it the smell of rain and something sharper underneath. Change. She felt it in her bones the way she always had. Whatever had brought this Mustang foal to her door was not finished yet. And whatever choice she made next would ripple far beyond this small cabin, into the open land that never forgot a single step taken upon it. The night crept in slowly, folding the land into shades of gray and black. The foal huddled in the corner of the cabin, trying to find comfort in the dim warmth. She sat beside it, hands pressed lightly to its side, listening to the slow rhythm of its breathing. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle of the wind through the brush outside, made her flinch. She had lived alone long enough to know that danger often came quietly, but that did not make it any easier when it came closer than expected. Her mind kept returning to the voices she had heard earlier. The words, even carried faintly by the wind, had left a sharp edge in her thoughts. People were moving through the land, searching, tracking, and they would not leave without taking notice of a young Mustang out of place. She had grown accustomed to the solitude, to the freedom of having no one near for miles, and the sudden presence of others unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. A low sound came from outside, subtle at first, almost lost in the wind. She froze, heart beating hard. The foal's ears twitched. She crouched low, peering through the window. A figure moved near the edge of the clearing, careful, deliberate. Not running, but not walking either, someone watching. She could not see much in the darkness, only the outline of a person and the faint glint of something metallic in their hand. Her pulse quickened. The foal shifted, nudging her hand. She whispered reassurance, though the sound did little to mask the tension that had settled in her chest. She had to think. She could not let fear dictate her actions, but every instinct in her body screamed caution. She glanced at the old supplies stacked neatly in the corner bandages. Dried herbs, water, blankets, and realized she had to prepare for what could come next. She was not entirely sure whether the intruder had noticed the cabin yet, but the thought of discovery made the hair on her arms stand on end. Hours passed, each one heavier than the last. The foal slept fitfully, its small body rising and falling under her touch. Every time she heard a distant crack of a branch, a faint hoofbeat, or the rush of wind across the plains, she tensed. Outside, the world seemed to hold a secret of its own, one she had not yet been invited to uncover. She thought of the herd, how far they might have gone, whether they were still searching, whether they had left the foal behind by choice or circumstance. That uncertainty gnawed at her almost as much as worry for the foal's leg. The memory of her first year on the land came back sharply. She had arrived when the homestead was almost abandoned, the fences broken, the fields overrun with wild growth. She had repaired what she could, built what she could, and learned to read the land in a way few others had bothered to. She understood tracks and signs, the way animals moved, the whispers of wind through the tall grass. And she knew that every small detail mattered, an overturned stone, a faint trail of blood, the absence of bird calls. Nothing was random. Everything carried a meaning waiting to be interpreted. A sudden clatter outside made her jump. The foal startled, but she pressed a hand to its shoulder, murmuring softly. She moved to the window again, peering through the darkness. The figure had shifted, closer now, moving along the faint trail near the creek. Whoever it was, they were searching carefully, methodically, as though they knew what they sought and refused to leave until they found it. She wondered if they realized the foal had been injured, or if they simply saw a young Mustang straying too far from its herd. She thought of her own past encounters with people who sought Mustangs, some for sport, some for sale, some for reasons she could not understand. The land was filled with those who wanted control over things that were meant to be free, and she had learned to navigate around them, avoiding unnecessary conflict. But now, with the foal at her door, that avoidance was no longer an option. She had to protect it, or it might pay a price she could not bear to imagine. Her thoughts were interrupted by the faint sound of hooves in the distance, but this time lighter, quicker, different. Could it be the herd returning, or another searcher? She held her breath, listening. The foal stirred at her side, ears pricked, eyes wide. She brushed her hand along its neck, murmuring calm, but inside she felt the tension building. Whoever or whatever was out there was testing her resolve, and she had to be ready for anything. She thought about how isolated she had become over the years. Few dared to travel this far out, and those who did often did not stay long. That isolation had been both a shield and a prison. She could act freely, but she had also grown accustomed to facing challenges alone. Now, with this foal depending on her, that solitude had weight. Decisions could not be delayed, and mistakes could be devastating. The wind shifted again, carrying with it the scent of the plain's dry grass, The faint iron tang of blood and something else she could not identify. Her stomach tightened. Danger was near, and she felt it not just in her mind but in her bones. She needed a plan. She needed to understand who was moving through her land and what they intended. And she needed to keep the foal safe while figuring it all out. Hours seemed to stretch unnaturally, the night thick with possibility. She thought of the foal's mother if she was alive, if she was searching. The connection between herd members was strong, instinctive, unbroken. The foal might not know it yet, but somewhere beyond the hills, someone was looking for it, someone whose absence could not be ignored. That thought brought both hope because there might be rescue. Fear, because if the searchers found the foal first, it could be taken from the only safety it had known. She rose slowly, moving to the door with caution. The foal followed, tentative, trusting her judgment. She crouched, listening. The noises outside had grown quieter for now, but the shift in air told her they had not gone far. She had to decide, stay hidden and wait for daylight, or take action, risk exposure, and guide the foal to safety herself. Every instinct screamed that neither choice was without peril. Her gaze swept across the horizon. Shadows of hills and brush merged in the darkness. The faint outline of a trail appeared, one she had walked herself many times in better circumstances. She could lead the foal there, away from the cabin, toward cover and water, perhaps even back to where the herd might be. But every step outside carried risk, and the unknown stretched endlessly in every direction. She thought of the past few days, the injured foal appearing at her door, the strange movements of the herd, the voices she had overheard. Each detail added weight, each moment a reminder that the land held more than open space. It held choices, consequences, and the fragile balance between freedom and danger. She had survived here for years, relying on her knowledge, patience, and quiet resolve. But this was different. This time she was not alone in her concern. The foal relied on her in ways that could not be ignored. She knelt again beside the foal, pressing a hand to its shoulder. Its eyes met hers, wide and searching. It did not know what awaited outside, or if it even mattered. All it knew was trust. And she knew that trust demanded action, courage, and care, even when the outcome was uncertain. Far off, the wind carried faint hooves again, and the hint of voices. The night had grown colder, the shadows longer. She hugged the foal close, whispering soft words that promised nothing but presence. Somewhere beyond the hills, something was stirring, and she had no choice but to face it. The foal's fate, and perhaps something larger, now rested in her hands. She could feel it in the air, thick with tension and possibility, and she knew the coming hours would define more than just one small life. As the darkness pressed closer, her thoughts spun between hope and caution, freedom and danger. She had faced challenges before, but never with stakes so high, never with a life so fragile depending entirely on her choices. Outside, the land held its secrets, the herd moved unseen, and the wind carried whispers she could not yet interpret. Everything hung in balance, and the night had only just begun. The wind had picked up again, whistling through the broken boards of the cabin, and carrying with it the scent of distant rain, wet earth, and something darker that made her skin prickle. The foal lay beside her, trembling not just from injury but from the tension that filled the night. Every muscle in its small body was taut, every ear flicking toward a sound she could barely hear over her own heartbeat. She had never known fear like this, a fear for another life that burned hotter than her own. A sharp snap of a branch drew her eyes to the edge of the clearing. Moonlight broke through the clouds, spilling in silver streaks across the land, revealing movement. Figures more than one stepped into view, careful, deliberate, their shadows stretching long and thin over the grass. She could see the glint of metal, faint and ominous, in their hands. Not tools meant for fixing fences, but for taking, capturing, controlling. Her breath caught, her pulse rising. They were close enough now that a single misstep could expose them to sight. She pressed her hand lightly to the foal's side, trying to calm it, trying to calm herself. But neither of them could ignore the tension that pressed in from every direction. The air seemed thicker, heavier, filled with expectation. Something had shifted tonight, some invisible line crossed, and she felt it in her bones. What came next would not be gentle. A sudden cry pierced the night. It was not human, not fully, but the unmistakable call of a Mustang, a mother searching, desperate, calling for her lost young. The foal's head jerked up, ears pricked, eyes wide. The sound carried over the hills, echoed back in faint repetitions, and yet she noticed the figures outside did not pause. They did not hesitate. They moved faster, more determined, as if the call had only spurred them on. Her chest tightened. The herd was near, but not here yet. And the foal could not survive out there alone. She had to decide, and quickly. Every second now mattered, every movement could change what came next. She scanned the room for anything she could use, anything that could buy time, anything that could protect the foal long enough to give it a chance. Blankets, ropes, water buckets, she grabbed what she could and piled them near the doorway. It was not much, but it was something. Outside, a shadow moved closer. The wind carried a faint cough, a whisper of sound that made her realize these were not just trackers, they were prepared, experienced. They did not stumble, did not hesitate. Her mind raced through possibilities, each one more dangerous than the last. She thought of the old trails, the broken fence lines, the hidden hollows where the foal might hide, and wondered if there would be time to get there before discovery. The foal whinnied softly, a sound of fear and recognition, and pressed against her side. She hugged it close, whispering, "Stay with me, stay quiet, stay safe." The words sounded small, powerless, but she held to them like a lifeline. She had survived storms and long winters, faced predators and isolation, but nothing had ever felt this fragile, this urgent. From the window, she caught a flash of movement, a reflection of metal, and realized they were drawing closer to the cabin. Her stomach churned. If they entered, the foal had no chance. Her own life would be at risk too, but the foal's life depended entirely on her courage and speed. She considered escape routes, every gap in the walls, every shadow where the foal could be dragged unseen. There was little time. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying a faint scent of smoke. Her heart skipped. Fires in the distance were not uncommon in dry seasons, but tonight it felt like a warning. Something bigger than human pursuit was coming into play. Her fingers tightened around the foal's mane, grounding both of them in the small safety of the cabin. The foal stirred, small hooves pressing against her lap, and she murmured, "I won't let them take you. I can't." The footsteps outside grew louder, heavier, deliberate. A figure appeared at the edge of the cabin, then another, circling, scanning, testing. She could see their outlines clearly now, one pausing near the creek, another moving along the faint path that led back toward the hills. Their eyes caught every shadow, every movement. They were patient, calculating, and she realized that patience was their greatest weapon. They would wait, watch, until they knew exactly how to strike. The foal trembled, low whinnies escaping its throat. She pressed her hand to its side, whispering reassurance. But inside, fear gnawed at her, sharper than the night wind. She had faced dangers before, but never one that demanded perfect timing, perfect calm, perfect awareness. One wrong breath, one wrong step, and the foal could be lost. And she would be left with nothing but the echo of failure in the quiet night. Then a distant sound broke her focus, hoofbeats, rapid, pounding, coming from a direction she had not anticipated. Her pulse spiked. Could it be the herd? The sound was heavy, deliberate, but chaotic in rhythm. Something or someone was approaching fast. She glanced at the foal, its eyes wide, tail flicking nervously. There was no time for hesitation. Her mind raced through the plan she had imagined over and over in the last tense hours. She could try to lure the foal to the hidden hollow near the creek, a spot she had used herself when storms and predators threatened. It was risky too, exposed if the figures outside noticed. But staying inside meant certain confrontation, a direct clash. She could not be sure she would survive. The foal's safety outweighed her own fear. She had to act. A low whistle sounded outside, subtle but deliberate. It carried the edge of command, and she realized the searchers were signaling to each other. Their coordination was precise, frightening in its efficiency. Whoever they were, they knew the land, the habits of Mustangs, the likely paths a frightened foal would take. Time was slipping away. Every second now brought the inevitable closer. She crouched beside the foal, pressing a hand against its shoulder. "We have to move," she whispered. Her voice was soft, urgent, carrying a note of resolve she did not yet feel in her bones. The foal shifted but did not resist. Somehow it sensed the urgency, the danger that pressed in from outside. Together they moved toward the side door, the small bundle of supplies she had gathered clutched in her other hand. Outside, the world seemed alive with unseen threats. Shadows shifted among the brush. Branches snapped under careful, calculated steps. Hoofbeats and murmured voices moved closer, closer than she dared to imagine. She felt the wind push against her, carrying both the scent of rain and the metallic tang of fear. Every instinct screamed that the searchers were near, that one wrong move could unravel everything she had worked to protect. The hollow near the creek was close, but the path was dangerous. Broken fence lines, uneven ground, and the weight of the foal's injuries slowed their progress. Each step had to be calculated, careful. She urged the foal forward with gentle touches, whispered coaxing, and small reassurances. The foal stumbled once, then again, but she held it upright, steady, refusing to let panic take hold. Suddenly, a sharp shout broke the night air, followed by the crack of a branch under heavy boots. Her heart jumped. They had been spotted, or at least the intruders had noticed the disturbance. She pressed the foal to the ground, hiding behind a low rise, and held her breath. Hooves pounded closer, voices louder, commanding. The wind carried the sounds unevenly, but the danger was clear. They were closing in fast, no longer cautious, no longer patient. The foal pressed against her, small but alive with tension. She felt its heartbeat under her hand, rapid, scared. She whispered again, soft and steady. "We're almost there, just a little more." But inside, fear surged like a tide. One more sound, one misstep, and everything could be lost. From the hills, a distant cry echoed, sharp, wild, instinctive. It carried the sound of the herd somehow. They had not abandoned the foal entirely. That note of hope mixed with fear, making her pulse race faster. The searchers froze for a moment at the sound, uncertainty flickering in their movements, then pressed on with renewed determination. Her hands shook as she guided the foal through the final stretch, the hollow just within reach. Every shadow could conceal a threat. Every rustle could signal discovery. The foal stumbled again, and she caught it just in time, pressing it against the bank of the small depression that would provide cover. Her lungs burned, her heart pounded, and yet she knew she could not stop. The night was far from over, and the true danger had only just begun. Outside, the searchers' voices grew closer, sharper, more precise. Hoofbeats pounded against the earth in erratic patterns, and the metallic glint she had seen earlier caught the moonlight again. She pressed the foal close, feeling its small body tremble against hers. Every sense screamed that the climax of this long, tense night was upon them, that what they faced next would demand all of her courage, all of her cunning, all of the quiet knowledge she had gained from years on this land. The wind carried another sound now, faint but unmistakable, the pounding rhythm of hooves, the call of the herd drawing near. Her chest tightened with anticipation, a mix of hope and fear, knowing that the moment of confrontation, the moment that would decide the foal's fate, was coming faster than she could prepare for it. The foal trembled under her hand as the pounding of hooves grew louder, not just from the searchers but from the herd itself. She held her breath, feeling the ground vibrate beneath them, the raw power of life in motion. The distant cries of the Mustangs reached a crescendo, high and urgent, echoing across the hills. In that moment she understood that the foal was not alone, its family had not abandoned it. And with that knowledge, a thread of hope wove through the fear that had gripped her all night. The searchers paused, uncertainty flickering in their movements as the wild cries of the herd cut through the night air. They hesitated on the edge of the clearing, glancing at one another, weighing the risk of pushing forward. She pressed herself and the foal lower into the hollow, heart hammering in rhythm with the thunder of hooves. The wind shifted, carrying scents she had learned to read, grass trampled by passage. Dust stirred, the unmistakable smell of wild horses in flight. It was all she needed. She motioned for the foal to stay still, whispering soft encouragements as the chaos outside held for a brief, tense moment. Then the Mustangs appeared, silhouettes streaking over the rise, dark shapes against the silver moonlight. They circled, calling to one another, forming a protective barrier around the young foal. She watched, marveling at the intelligence and instinct of these animals. The foal's mother, easily recognizable by her scarred shoulder and alert posture, moved closer to the cabin, eyes scanning for any threat. The foal responded instinctively, pressing closer to her for reassurance, then lifting its head at the sound of the familiar voice from the herd. Relief washed over her in a sharp, almost painful wave. The searchers, realizing they were outnumbered, uneasy, and in no position to capture the young Mustang, exchanged hurried words. Their frustration was clear, but the herd's presence left them with no choice. They retreated slowly, glances over their shoulders, eyes narrowed with defeat. The tension that had gripped the night finally eased as the figures disappeared into the darkness, leaving only the wind, the shadows, and the quiet echo of hooves fading into the distance. She let out a long, shuddering breath and sank back against the side of the hollow, heart still racing. The foal nuzzled her hand, small but strong, eyes bright with recognition and gratitude. She felt a swell of warmth, a connection deeper than words could express. Here, in the quiet aftermath, life had returned to its natural rhythm. Trust had been tested, fear confronted, and now, with the herd reunited and the intruders gone, the foal's world was whole again. The mother moved closer, ears flicking, tail swishing, and nudged her foal toward the small protective shelter she had provided. It stumbled at first, weakness from the injury still evident, but the instinct to follow its mother was stronger than pain. She stayed close, hand resting on the foal's back, offering calm and reassurance until it regained enough strength to stand more steadily. The reunion was quiet but profound. The mother's eyes met hers for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement of help, of intervention, of trust returned. Night turned slowly to dawn. The sky lightened, and the first hints of gold touched the horizon. She stayed with the foal and its mother until the herd began to move again, circling the young one, teaching it to step carefully, testing its strength, preparing it to return to the open plains. She watched them move, hearts and hooves in rhythm, a perfect balance restored. Every scar, every worry, every decision of the past night had led to this moment. She thought about the intruders, the searchers, and realized their presence had been a catalyst. They had forced her to act quickly, to think strategically, and to step fully into her role as protector. She had questioned herself, her knowledge, her courage, but every choice had counted. Even in the face of danger, she had succeeded because of patience, understanding, and the willingness to trust both herself and the instincts of the animals around her. The foal, now steadier on its legs, nuzzled against its mother and then toward her one last time, a gesture that held gratitude she could not speak in words. She knelt for a moment, letting her fingers trace the warm, soft coat, knowing she had played a part in something bigger than herself. Nature, she realized, demanded respect, care, and courage, and it rewarded those who honored it. By mid-morning, the herd had moved beyond sight, blending once more into the rolling plains. The foal's injury, though minor in comparison to what could have been, would heal in time. She had seen it lie down and rise again, strong enough to follow, to survive. And she had learned something herself, as much about the wild as about her own strength, the kind that emerges quietly, tested by challenge and tempered by patience. She returned to the cabin, still watchful, still alert, but lighter in spirit. The land around her seemed quieter, almost grateful, as if it too had witnessed the night's trials and approved of the outcome. She began tidying the small area near the cabin, gathering scattered supplies, repairing a few broken boards, making small improvements that would matter for the days ahead. The night's events had left traces, but she was determined that every scar could become a lesson rather than a burden. As she worked, she reflected on the connection between humans and the wild creatures who shared the land. Trust, patience, and respect were more than ideals, they were survival. She had given the foal safety when it could not protect itself, and in return she had been given a glimpse of raw, instinctive grace that few ever saw. That bond, fragile yet enduring, was a reminder that courage often took the form of quiet action rather than grand gesture. Her thoughts drifted to the stories she had heard from travelers years ago, tales of Mustangs that survived impossible odds, of land that provided for those willing to pay attention, of life cycles that tested strength and wisdom alike. Now, having faced the night and witnessed the reunion, She understood that she had lived one of those stories herself. She had been tested, and though fear had been present, so had resolve. And in that balance she had found clarity, humility, and quiet triumph. The day stretched on, and with it came a sense of restoration. Birds called from the trees, the wind moved gently through the grass, and the smell of damp earth mingled with the sun-warmed air. She sat on the porch, watching the land, knowing that somewhere the foal and its herd roamed freely once more. There would be danger again, seasons of harsh sun or sudden storms, and predators or careless humans might cross the plains. But the young Mustang had a chance now, and she had played a role in preserving it. She thought of the lessons from the night. Vigilance mattered. Instincts mattered, and intervention mattered, but only when done with respect. The foal's survival was not just about quick thinking or bravery. It was about understanding the delicate balance between freedom and safety. She had learned once more that protecting life required patience, courage, and the humility to step aside when the natural order reclaimed its path. Her hands rested on the wooden railing, rough from years of use, as the wind carried a faint scent of mustangs on the horizon. She closed her eyes, feeling the sun warm her face, listening to the harmony of life continuing around her. The foal had been injured, yes, but it had survived. The herd had been reunited, and she had witnessed the enduring strength of instinct, family, and trust. When she opened her eyes, the land stretched endless, quiet yet alive. The foal and its family were a reminder that life persisted, that hope could survive the darkest nights, and that courage, however quiet or hidden, could make a difference. She felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that in the face of fear and uncertainty, she had acted and that action had mattered. As she stepped inside the cabin to finish her chores, she allowed herself a small smile, the kind that came from satisfaction mixed with quiet relief. She had faced the night, confronted danger, and protected a life that depended entirely on her. The foal would continue its journey, and she would continue hers, both strengthened by the events that had unfolded. And though the plains would always hold new challenges, storms, and unknown threats, she knew this. Trust, patience, and courage could shape outcomes that seemed impossible. She had witnessed it firsthand, in the trembling legs of a young Mustang, in the circling shadows of a protective herd, and in the stillness that followed the chaos. The night had tested her, the land had tested her, and she had met that test. The foal's mother called once, a soft, musical note, and the young one trotted after her, moving with steady, cautious strength. She watched until they disappeared over the rise, a small figure against the vast horizon, free again, wild and unbroken. And in that moment, she felt a quiet certainty, a sense of connection to something larger than herself, a reassurance that life, in all its fragile beauty, was worth fighting for. She returned to the cabin, carrying with her the memory of the night, the foal, and the herd, a story etched in heart and mind. The wind shifted, the sun rose higher, and she knew that though the land would test her again, she was ready. Hope had been restored, trust had been honored, and courage had carried them through. The foal had survived, and in that survival she found something enduring, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, life could be saved, faith could be renewed, and the quiet strength of care could make a difference that would last far longer than a single night.